Welcome to No Todo Se Cura con Vix, your go-to destination for Latinas getting real with their healing journey. We are so thrilled to have you here with us today. First off, we want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all our listeners. Your support, your loyalty mean the world to us. Without you, none of this would even be possible. We also want to take a moment to express how much your support matters. Every download, share, and like helps us grow and reach more people who might benefit from our content. So, if you enjoy what you hear today, I encourage you to hit that download button and share our episodes with your friends, your family, and anyone who you think might enjoy them. Your actions truly make a difference in helping us expand our podcast family. So once again, thank you for being a part of our journey with us. Let's continue to learn, grow, and explore together. Now, let's jump right into today's episode.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast, No Todo Se Cura con Vix. We are your girls, Maggie, Jessie,
Heidi.
and today we have a very cool guest. I've known this guest for a very long time, since we were teenagers.
Like 14?
Yeah, very long time.
Wow.
And we're so happy to have her. She's an awesome, awesome person. It is Tanya Martinez-Gallinucci. She's with us today,
Thank you.
Yes.
and we're so excited. Thank you so much for saying yes to being part of our little beautiful podcast.
Truly my pleasure. Truly.
So awesome. All right. So who is Tanya? Tanya is the executive director of the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at the New York City Bar Association. She is a first-generation professional, mother of two, and a breaker of generational curses. Love that. Her DEIB philosophy is rooted in building community to create psychological safety. That was my bad.
No
So
worries.
that everyone gets the opportunity to be their authentic selves. Prior to joining the DEIB, Tanya was a New York City public school teacher in the Bronx and Washington Heights, and later a litigation associate at, I want to say this right, Clary Gottlieb. Did I say that right?
So close. So close. And it's not your fault. They're weird names. It's Cleary Gottlieb, which
Clary
is
Gottlieb.
it's a law firm, a global law firm.
Both sets of experiences have deeply informed Tanya's DEIB practice. Thank you again for being part of our podcast.
Well,
We're
thank you
very
guys for
happy to
having
have
me.
you.
It's truly an honor and a pleasure. I was so excited when I got the text, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So thank you for having me.
We're excited to
Yes.
have you.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm always ready for a Kiki, okay? Kiki with the girls, I'm here for it.
Yes.
Just thanks.
And just to confirm, Tanya, you're Puerto Rican and Dominican.
That's right. I was born
Yes.
in New York. My mom was born in the DR. My father was born here, but he's Puerto Rican. Yeah.
So Tanya, can you please explain to our listeners what the DEIB is?
Sure. And, we can go over each of the individual letters, the D, E, I, and B. But I'm going to promise you right now, even though I explained that still won't tell you what I do necessarily. And so we can get into that as well. But yeah, DEIB is all over the news right now. There's a lot of misinformation about what it is and what it isn't. And I think no matter what, the takeaway here, I think, about what DEIB is that it's meant for everyone. It really is. I think there's a lot of people who like to paint it as for certain types of people, but really, it really is about everyone participating and coming together and making sure that everyone has an opportunity to live and thrive in our society. So with that D stands for diversity. And if you remember back to like high school biology, it has the same exact meaning. Diversity means all the different things that come together to make up something. right? And if you think about diversity in terms of the way we see it in living organisms, right, including humans, but for making this simple, let's think about cats, right? Cats come in every shape, color, form. They look different. They sound different, everything. That's what diversity is. It's all the differences that make up something, just like humans, right? So that's D. E stands for equity, not equality. And there's a really important reason why it's not equality. And this is something that people mix up all the time. Equality literally means equal, the same, right? And so when we're thinking about our societal structures and how to create access and how to make sure everyone has a fair chance to thrive, we don't think about equality, because equality isn't necessarily the thing that will allow everyone to thrive. You can give everyone the same thing, and it's not going to affect everyone the same way, right? A perfect example we see, there's like all these memes about the differences between equity and equality people have probably seen. But I love the example of giving people shoes, right? You can give everyone sneakers, but what if the person's a runner? What if the person only has one foot? What if you gave them the wrong size? What if you gave them something that actually caused them pain? Right? So we don't want to give everyone the same thing. We want to give them the thing that they specifically need and whatever their context is to thrive. And that's going to be different for everyone, because why? The big D, diversity. That's why. We are all different, right? So that's what the E stands for. The I stands for inclusion. And it's this idea that we need to be intentional and thoughtful about making sure everyone has that chance to survive and thrive, right? People get excluded, even unintentionally, especially unintentionally. And so inclusion, we can never allow just to happen by accident. We must be vigilant and be sure that everyone is included. And that's just like a reminder to us. If you're not including them, you are excluding them. Right? There is no middle ground. There's no fence sitting on this one. You're either including them or you're not. Right? It's really easy to see. And then the B stands for belonging, right? And this is just one of the most basic values and principles we as humans need. People need to feel that they belong, right? And you can do everything in your power to get into spaces that you want. That doesn't mean that you feel like you belong there. And so this is where the inclusion piece comes in, right? This is where the equity piece comes in. And of course, it's always acknowledging that we are all different, right? And so that's what the letters for the word, the DEIB means. That's what the acronym means. But I find when I talk about what the work is and what it isn't, it's helpful to think about what the end goal is more than anything. And for that, I like to point folks to a definition that was coined by Lily Zhang, who is a premier expert, I think, in the field. They are just so thoughtful in their approach and in explaining what it is and what it isn't. They wrote this book called DEI Deconstructed. It came out in 2022. It is worth every penny. It's probably like $20, by the way. And it really explains the history of DEI, where it started, where we are now, and it's brutally honest about the limitations of DEI as well. So it's made for anyone. Like if you have a job, if you work with people, if you speak to other human beings in your daily life, you should probably read this book, because it's really, really helpful in thinking about how we implement these principles in practice. Anyway,
what's the name of the book again?
DEI Deconstructed. And the author is Lily Zhang. And if you don't follow them on LinkedIn, follow them. They are amazing. Their content is so freaking good. But their definition, of course, I sing their praises anytime I can. We've never met. I'm just like a stan. I feel like one day I'm gonna get like a letter from Lily Zhang's people, like, what's up?
You are a stalker.
True story. Yeah. I'm like, they're gonna be like, really? Anyway, the definition that they provided, and this is for the end goal, right? The end goal of DEI. They wrote, DEI works DEI work builds on the legacy of social justice and civil rights movements. It aims to create organizations and societies that populations perceive as trustworthy, safe, representative, respectful, and accountable. And it grounds itself in outcomes like success, stability, health, and general well-being. So that's what
beautiful.
DEI is.
My daughter is studying sociology. She would love this book.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. DEI is many disciplines in one.
Yeah.
It's sociology, it's psychological organization, organizational psychology, it's law, it's regular psychology, it's neuroscience. There's so many disciplines in DEI.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Very
yeah.
interesting. Mm-hmm.
When you were talking about equity and equality, it reminded me when I used to work at the school, because we used to have a training about that. I don't know how great the training was, but
oh, that's real, girl. That's real.
Yeah,
that is very real.
Sometimes it feels that it's like corporates just putting like a check mark to something, like we did it, but there's no meaning to it.
That's right.
But they had a picture. It was so beautiful, of 4 boys, and they were trying to see a baseball game, but the fence was too high. And so what they did was they gave them blocks, but the blocks were all the same size, so that they can hop into the block and be able to watch the baseball game. But what they discovered was one was way taller. So when he hopped on the block, he was, half of his body was out of the fence.
He could see without the block, right? He didn't even need the blocks, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then there was a really tiny little boy with the same block that nothing happened. He still was not able to. He couldn't. And so that really stuck to me in regards to the difference about equality and equity.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
And I think sometimes we do get confused with that.
Yeah. I feel like we get confused with it, or we get really stuck in equality. And we don't really think about, Yeah.
Everyone's experiences are so different.
Right.
So
yeah, people
putting
need
it all into
different
one.
things.
Yeah. I agree.
And it's a concept, funny enough, I've been a teacher, I am a lawyer, and I was a practicing lawyer. I'm not practicing law anymore, but I'm still a lawyer, right? As a teacher in New York City public schools, the idea of equity was very normal to me. I was a teacher in the time where we were really focused on differentiation, right? And so differentiation is exactly that. Like, you need to know what your kids need. You need to know what your students need as individuals. And you need to work with them and figure out the best way to teach them as an individual. And, it was shocking to me when I went into law that those very same principles that me, a New York City public school teacher, was applying in my classrooms to make sure every single one of my kids were thriving wasn't being applied to us as students in law, right? Or even further on, once you're in the practice of law, it's like sink or float. Best of luck.
Tanya, can you describe your philosophy, your own personal, we probably did, talk about this a little bit more on diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and kind of like how has that reflected in your role as an executive director?
Sure. So I should back it up just a little bit by saying that one of the biggest critiques of the DEI industry is that it's not a regulated industry, right? And I think there's a fair critique of that, but there's also some unfair critiques of it as well, right? There are a lot of unregulated industries that don't get this same critique. So let's just be real with that, including lots of types of consulting and even the legal profession, which is a self-regulating profession. There are issues there as well. So I just want to level the playing field. DEI is not that different from any others, but people love to be like, well, it's not regulated. Well, it's not a regulated thing. And that's a fair critique in some respects as well, because it's not regulated, anyone could be a DEI expert. You could read one book, open your own LLC, now you know DEI. Now you're a DEI expert. And that's a real problem, right?
Yeah.
Here's some factoids that are not completely unrelated to that, right? The vast majority of DEI professionals are white women. It's like 80%. So think about what that means, especially thinking about the end goals, right?
Inclusion.
Hello, right? Like it really is. So the very industry that is purporting to tackle these issues are also bogged down by the same issues. And that makes sense, right? Like people are like, how could that be? Of course, that's every industry, boo-boo. What industry in America is not like that?
Yeah.
It's because we're all part of the same structures, right? The same like hierarchical structures of white supremacy, patriarchy, you name it. Yep. All of these industries are suffering from it, including this one, right? So I only preface it with that, Margaret, because, you know, when you're thinking about hiring someone to do DEI or working with a DEI consultant or working with someone who is doing change management or something like that, it's really important to vet them. And I think a lot of times the vetting that people do is really silly. Like, it's like, for the last 25 years, I want to know how many organizations you have changed. And it's like, 0, because none of these have changed. What are you talking about? These are all horrible. Like, I'm just like, let's just be real, okay? Like, thank you. And obviously I'm being facetious. There are obviously organizations that are doing amazing things and people who have created real change. But let's just like set the playing field. The vast majority of institutions are not meeting the mark in any way, shape, or form, right? Like we are far, far, far from where we need to be. And it's a societal issue, not because of the individual institutions necessarily. We know that there are many, many groups of people who are underrepresented across the board. So when you are vetting someone, it's not necessarily what their track record has been in the last 25 years, even though that should be a part of it as well. But it's also about what are their methodologies? What are they pointing to as their sources of knowledge? What's the cutting edge? And are they there? You know? So there's other things to think about. So one of the things that I like to look at and think about and see, and when I'm talking to folks about what it is I do, is I try to mention what my personal guiding principles are. And there are some that I feel like most DEI practitioners will all agree on, right? And so a lot of us will say the first rule of DEI is do no harm, right? Whatever it is you are doing should not cause harm to anyone. And if it does, then you're not doing it right, right? And so it's the first rule of DEI is do no harm. Now, does that mean that you never do harm? Of course not. Even in your heart of hearts, like you could be having the best intentions. You could have done all the research. You could have had all this planned out, right? And you might still make a mistake. You might still cause harm.
Yeah.
That's okay. Like, that's how we learn, you know? The thing you have to do is, well, first repair, right? Make sure that any harm you've caused, you're going to mitigate it, fix it, get to it, acknowledge it, apologize, learn from it, and don't do it again. Right? Like people get so caught up in being the perfect person, they forget to just be a good person. Right? Like it doesn't have to be all or nothing, you know, make your repairs. So that's one principle I would say that's in my philosophy, and that I really think it's an important piece of DEI. And I think most practitioners would agree with that, right? So that's one principle. Another principle is relatedly accountability, right? Holding yourself and others accountable. Part of my job is being a radical truth teller, like a radical truth teller to everyone, especially where I work, which is not a normal role for someone who looks like me. Usually in these spaces, I'm not telling the truth. People who look like me are not telling the truth. In fact, we're usually very silent for safety, to keep our jobs, to make sure we don't offend the wrong person, to make sure that, you know, we're in our lane and we can have our paycheck at the end of the week, right? And my job is sort of the opposite. It's like radical honesty. It's like, nope, this is racist. This is a problem. And I'm often, you know, the person in the room who is like, hi, as the only person of color here, I have a comment to make. And I say it like that. And I'm like, I hope you feel uncomfortable. You should feel uncomfortable. In the best possible way, right? Like, I'm not trying to cause harm. I want everyone to think about the elephant in the room. right? The elephant in the room is there are not enough people like me at this table, and there are not enough people who are different from all of us at this table. And that's the problem. And so it is my job to make sure everyone remembers that and that we are working to fix that, right? So
Yes,
accountability is a piece.
Go. Yes.
Can you tell I'm super popular?
Let me tell you, I am loving the passion, and I love. I mean, these are the same battles we've been fighting for years, and we
Forever.
need that. We know we need. This is. We're not going to get our points across by sitting down and listening to everybody else, and not putting our 2 cents into everything.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And I should mention, in case it's not obvious, these views are my own, right? Yes, I work for the New York City Bar, but these are not necessarily their views. These are my views. Right? Like, these are my views.
But it makes a lot of sense. It's like what I was saying before, like there's these corporations that are like, yes, we want to do diversity. We want to do the racism work. We want to do all of that. But it's when they start doing it and it gets really heavy or it gets challenging, then then it becomes more of like, it's a to-do task. Just like it just feels like we're just doing a check to say that this company is aware of diversity, and we spoke about racism and microaggression and all of that. But I don't think that the work is really being done or taken seriously at times.
Oh yeah, it's a huge issue. It's one of the biggest obstacles to this work. We call it performative DEI. It is a performance. You are performing.
That's a perfect name.
Yeah.
That is. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we call it. We call it performative DEI. Right. And to your point, like, you can put on as many microaggression trainings as you want. Microaggressions trainings in and of themselves will not change behavior. There's research. We know that in and of itself will not work, but also because in order for microaggressions to change, people need to be, one, radically aware of their inner thoughts and be actively and intentionally working on their biases through things like meditation, journaling, working with a therapist. There's so many things people need to do in order to be aware of their unconsciousness, right? So much of my job is getting people to wake up, just wake up. And it's like, I have a training that I do. It's called Beyond Bias training, where I literally talk about the neuroscience of how we learn things and how we unlearn things. And the whole point of it is just to start getting people to become curious about their thoughts and to realize that they are not their thoughts. And you have so many thoughts that are just automatic and out of your control. If you're letting them rule you, they will rule you. Like, you are not in control of your identity. And so it's like, try to remember who you are and live to that person, be that person,
Yeah, and as a first generation, I imagine that's got to be interesting, right?
Oh, yeah.
Trying to convince our, people, our community, that you are not your thoughts, you are not these beliefs, you are not, how you grew up. So it's so interesting you mentioning this. Wow.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I feel like that's sort of what primed me into being this person and finding my voice, because I feel like for so much of my life, especially growing up in a very Dominican household, the racism was rampant. The anti-Blackness was rampant. And I was always this little voice of like, no. And it was just like fighting. And, I grew up it's funny. I grew up in the projects across the street from Lincoln Center. So I often describe, it's wild. That's a crazy place. Crazy place.
Yeah.
I say that I grew up in the cross section between poverty and privilege.
Yes. Literally. Like legit, literally.
It's exactly that. We lived in a pocket of poverty, surrounded by some of the most affluence you find in New York City.
Yes.
For most of my childhood, we didn't have a supermarket nearby that we could shop at. For most of my childhood, we used to walk with our little carrito all the way to 50-something street in the rain, sleet, or snow, because there wasn't affordable food where we were.
Yeah.
I mean, now there's like a Western beef there, but that happened. I was a teenager already when they built that.
When that started,
But you know, so I grew up already, like, my earliest memories as a child, even when I'm 3 or 4, I'm hyper aware of race, sex, social class, and that we are not like them.
Exactly.
Like already. And where I grew up is like 90% Black, right? So I went to school where I was a minority in some sense because I was Latina, but like there was camaraderie there too. And I grew up in a school where we had Puerto Rican teachers, Black teachers. We only sang the Black national anthem at assemblies. So I didn't even know the American national anthem till later in life.
Oh,
we grew up singing the Black national anthem.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so wow.
That is insane.
And our teachers were just like, they were for us, you know, like they were so for us. Like we never learned that Columbus discovered America. The Puerto Rican teachers were not having it. We learned. We did not. We learned about slavery, the civil rights movement.
Because we need them.
Right? We should.
We need them to go to Florida.
Right? But this is what I'm saying. This is how DEI is under attack all over the country, everywhere you can look. Right? This is what it is. And so for me, like seeing this world and being exposed to it this way, it was very clear to me. It's like, we all have to be worthy. We all have to have dignity. And it has to start with me, right? I can't hate anyone else if I'm saying I need to be loved. And so from a very early age, there was this battle with my family internally. And I've always been sort of the black sheep because I would be like, absolutely not. That is racist. You like all these things. And so it kind of just developed. And it's like, bitch, if I can do it to my family, you think I can't do it to you? Like someone I don't even know, someone who is a bigger part of the problem. Like if I can do that to my grandma, bro, I could do it to you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I could
They were the guinea pigs. They were the guinea pigs. That's how you build your force and your energy. You're like, oh,
and
I
let
can
me
do
tell
this
you,
anywhere.
those old school, like we were saying, those old school like boomers, they do not evolve. So it's hard to get to them. So you were there, like fight, like you got all of your training with your family.
With my family. With and Dominicans, no less, right? Like it's like, think about the generational stuff. Think about like, I always say our people got it first. Columbus came to Hispaniola first. Our generational trauma with it, we know better than anyone.
Yeah. Yes. And then we had Trujillo too. For many, many years. That was such a racist individual.
Yeah.
I just want to call him individual.
I mean, and what's happening right now?
I'm gonna say
wild.
piece of shit.
Yeah. I want to be more accurate. Sorry.
Oh my goodness.
I feel like I was my birthright. Yet again, birthright. It's my birthright.
Love it. I love that.
So yeah, like you were saying, like your background as a first gen, as being, you know, in a Dominican family, Puerto Rican family, really like influence your professional approach to what you are doing now. It's like this was like you were meant to do this. You've been
calling. I feel that. That's what
you've been doing this as a little girl, pretty much.
It really does.
It's her calling.
It feels that way, and I didn't know it. Right? I didn't know that this was my calling. In how can I say this? Like I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I knew that for as long as I could remember, as a little girl, I felt like it was everyone's responsibility, not just mine. But I took it to heart that we should leave places better than we found them. That we should, you know, lift as we rise and make sure that we are all okay because we are all connected, right? Humans are connected by being born and alive on this planet. Right? Like miracle of life. We haven't even found other life. Can you believe we're all in this experience together? What a freaking miracle. Let's treat it like that, you know? So I've always felt that, but I didn't know what that would mean, right? And for a long time, I thought it meant that I was going to be a lawyer. And then I became a lawyer and I was like, oh shit, I made a horrible mistake. This is not about making sure that we're all okay. This is not about making sure that equity and justice reign. It's why I'm not a practicing lawyer anymore. I don't feel that way about the law. I don't feel like I can use it as that tool. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of lawyers who are doing the good work and fighting the good fight, but the systems are
corroded. Yeah.
They are, as we said.
Let me start again. A
rife
piece
with
of
white
shit.
supremacy. Correct. The accuracy. We need to make sure everyone knows. Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's you're doing amazing work and hard
Thank
work.
you.
Hard work.
Yeah.
You're dealing
Very hard.
with generational trauma, generational curse, and you're probably even dealing with secondary trauma, which is working with people that are experiencing trauma and coming to you to seek support. And so it impacts you. It's like secondary smoking.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And so you have a life, right? Tanya, ¿tú tienes vida?
Yep.
You have kids?
I have 2 kids.
Un esposo?
Yep.
How do you create balance for yourself? Because like I said, when you're working with generational curse, trauma, plus, you're human. So you're dealing with your own stuff. You don't have a perfect life. How do you create balance between work and life?
Oh my God. I'm so glad you asked that question, because I feel like right now, as you're talking to me, I'm in a really good place with managing it. But I want to just be very honest and vulnerable right here. It has not always been this. And I am now very firmly on the bright side of depression. But not too long ago, I was in the depths of depression because of the lack of balance, because of just how hard it is to maintain one's own well-being under these societal structures that were never built to let us be, to rest, to nurture, and to take care of ourselves, right? And so, during the pandemic, and I was still working in big law, which meant I was working 15-hour days. I had no nights, no weekends. I wasn't seeing my kids. I wasn't seeing my husband. I wasn't seeing my family. During that time, both my mother and father had acute mental health crises, independent of each other, but they both had serious health issues. And I ended up losing my mother during it. When I say I went through it, I went through it. I had no balance in my life. I gained a lot of weight. I couldn't lose the weight because I was just so stressed out. I was not well in terms of just my spirit. I felt like I had no direction. I felt like I didn't know what the next step was. And it was through hitting that rock bottom that I promised myself never again, right? I will never allow myself to abandon myself like this ever again, right? And so very slowly but surely, I started the path to finding myself again. Because that's what it feels like. I found myself again. I was like, oh, here you are, friend. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. It's I missed you. Where were you, girl? But it was such a process. It didn't happen overnight. And so I just want to preface this because I'm going to tell you how I keep balance. And if you would have told Tanya 4 years ago what I do now, I wouldn't even believe you. And I just want anyone who's listening to this who feels like it's not achievable, that it is, because I was on the other side of this. Okay. I was the one who was at rock bottom. But now what I do now is I put myself first. I need to. You have to water yourself first. You have to water yourself first.
It's a must.
I love how you're saying that.
You have to. It is. I'm getting chills saying it because for so long, there was a story I told myself that if I put myself first, I was selfish. That if I put myself first, I wasn't a good mother. That if I put myself first, I wasn't a good daughter or wife or all those things. And let me tell you, that is all of these systems of oppression we talked about. That's their voice. Right? Because you cannot be the best mother you can be if you are depleted. You cannot be the best daughter you can be if you are emotionally drained. And so my job is to do the best I can in taking care of myself so that I am my best self for me and for everyone else who needs me. And I take that shit to heart.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So to your question, what do I do to maintain that balance? I meditate, I run, I do yoga, I eat really well. I've been a vegetarian since I was like 14. I mean, anything. I really like physical movement. I do a lot of like inner child work. I think about lots of inner child work. Lots of inner child work.
We gotta visit her all the time.
It never ends.
Yes,
It never ends.
It never ends. It never ends.
I was telling Maggie and Jesse just yesterday. I was like, I had I was a 13-year-old the other day. Something triggered me, and I had to like work on that because I'm like, oh my gosh, she came out of nowhere. What the hell is going on? So I love that you do all these things. Oh my God.
Thank you. I'm so proud of it. I'm like, can you tell? I'm so proud of it because it saved my life. And I will never let myself get back there, right? Like once you know the truth, it's like, oh no, we deserve joy, right? Yeah. Joy is resistance. It is so easy to be caught up in all these systems, to let it take you down. But to quote someone who I'm forgetting her name now, but she was in the History of Black Twitter documentary. She said it perfectly. We are more than our suffering. We are so much more than our suffering. And so, could I get caught up in like, my mom died, my father's ill, can I stay there? Sure, I could stay there. And you should stay there as long as you need to, right? You need to work that out. You need to grieve. You need to process that. No one is doing this like toxic positivity, right? I'm not saying, turn that frown upside down. I'm not saying that, right? You have to go through it. You have to do the work. Part of life is, well, a lot of times people feel like obstacles are blocks in your path. And it's just like, no, boo-boo, obstacles are the path. You have to go through them. You come out
learn
better
from them. You guys,
that's how you learn. That's how you grow. If you stay within the same, you're going to stay the same. In order for you to grow, you need to get uncomfortable.
Exactly.
You do. If you don't, you're not going to grow. You're not going to change.
And I think that's what people are so afraid of.
Yeah. And you should be really proud of you, not only for you doing the work for you, but those two little kids are seeing that.
Yes.
They are. They're seeing it, and they're going to keep doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
They're going to understand how important it is to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful.
And that's how we break the cycles.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. And that's how you break the cycles.
Yes. And talking about breaking the cycle, right? This is so interesting, right? Because let's talk about breaking the cycle, breaking the curse. How do you do that in your career? I know you mentioned like being in these meetings and being very blunt about it. But what are the actions that you are taking to remind people like we got to break this curse? Yeah.
That's such a good question. And it's so different in lots of different spaces, right? And so one thing I want people to know is that anytime you're doing DEI in any context, in any space, it's always context specific, right? What works in one space for one group of people may not apply well in another space of another group of people. So much of what I have to do to even think about getting there is like create trust, respect, and make sure that we can have candid conversations, right? Like I say, doing DEI is a lot like exercising demons. You have to be able to name them so you can get them the hell out of here, right? And so I'll give you one example of something that I do, but this is just one method. There's so many other techniques and methods that I've used. We'll probably need like 3 other episodes to go through them, but I'll give you one example. So one thing that I've implemented everywhere I've ever worked are these like sort of mentoring circles, for lack of a better word. I call them pods. I call them DEIB pods. And the way that I've implemented them at the City Bar is I have a cross section of the organization in every single pod. So there are people of different seniorities, different departments, people who wouldn't necessarily ever talk to each other or meet each other. And it's a very, very small group of people, no more than 8. And we meet once a month. And I facilitate the conversations by providing them with questions and resources and things like that. And some of the meetings are very specific to DEIB, right? We'll like analyze like, what is a microaggression? Let's talk about it. Or it'll be something really silly like, what's your favorite movie and why? And everyone will talk about it. But the first piece of the experience, like the first few months, we're only getting to know each other. right? We're not doing any of the hard conversations. We're doing the get to know you conversations. We're having deep conversations about our families, where we grew up, some of our core values, our beliefs. We're doing fun things where we're laughing together. We spend a lot of time in the first few sessions creating community guidelines. Let's talk about how we want to deal with conflict when it comes up. Let's make some decisions now. What are our guiding principles? And we do this with every group individually. Once we have the community guidelines established, we've gotten to know each other, then we start having more serious conversations about things. We talked about our experiences during COVID. We talk about our experiences in the job with hierarchies. We talk about current events, things that people wouldn't dare talk about at work, but we have safety in these little groups where we can talk about it, right? And I've been doing them at the City Bar for a little over a year now. And the biggest feedback I get from the participants is, well, first of all, everyone loves it. And it tells me, I've never had a space like this. I've never had this at work. I've never had anything like this. And the biggest feedback that we get is everyone says, not everyone, but like a lot of people have said, since doing this, I take so much better care of myself. And I have so much better sense of like what I want to do while I'm here. And people are collaborating across departments in ways that they hadn't before. People are getting to know each other. So that's one way, one example of it. But there are other strategies as well.
There is. That's amazing. It's like a sense of belonging.
Ding, ding, ding. That's it.
Yeah.
And you have to show people what it feels like.
Yes.
Right.
Tanya, what are your thoughts about internal racism and generational curses? Because that happens a lot in our community, right?
Yep.
That we have a lot of internal racism.
Correct.
What are your thoughts about that?
So it's one of those things where it's not unique to Dominicans. It's not unique to Latinos. It is across the board. Anywhere you have anti-Blackness or any other types of racism or isms, you will also find internal, fill in the blank, racism, ableism, whatever. And that's to be expected, right? It is to be expected because we are all being fed the same propaganda. Our subconscious is all receiving the same whitewashed revisionist history. Everyone is receiving it. And even if you're at home and your parents, like me, right? Like I'm a DEI practitioner. The way I talk to my kids is different than the way I was talked to, right? The things, and you'll still see it pop up in our kids. You'll still hear it sometimes. We had an incident recently, girl, not for the podcast today, but we had an incident recently. My son said something. I was like, excuse me? Like, where did you get that idea from? We had to correct it and think about it as a family and talk about it out loud. But I only mention this because it's very prevalent. It's not your fault and you have no control over it. And I want to emphasize that because it's really easy to be really critical of these people, to, dismiss them as ignorant, to see all the flaws that they have, and they are flawed, right? These are flawed people. And pointing out their flaws in a way that makes them more defensive or fearful of considering what you're saying will never change their mind, right? And so much of this is understanding neuroscience and psychology, and it also needs to, you need to have hyper clarity and awareness of what's happening in the various dynamics at play. I don't get into arguments where I have to discuss my value as a human being or the value of other human beings, right? If I have to explain that to you, you are so far away from where I am conceptually, like that we need a lot more to bridge that gap. Right? And so picking and choosing your battles is really important. Sometimes you just need to be there to like let them get their guard down. I will not talk to someone about this if they are activated, if they are yelling, if they are obviously coming from fear and anger, because you can't even receive what I'm saying. We know that from neuroscience. And so much of what I do is like, why don't we talk about this when you are regulated?
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about this when you're in your best mind? And I do the same. Like if I feel activated, I'm the first one to be like, I feel activated. I'm going to take some time. I'll let you know when I'm ready. And I'm one of those people, like you might not even know I'm activated. I will look as calm as Buddha. Like I'll look really calm. I'll be inside. I'll be burning up. And I'll just say,
a volcano.
And I'm like, I need space. But yeah, to your point, it's common, everyone, and everyone has it. obviously some people have more than others, but we all have it. We all have it. Those are the internal biases that we need to evaluate. Because if you think that folks are just putting those biases, those anti-Blackness, that the fat phobia, all that on others, you are doing it worse to yourself, boo-boo, and you don't even realize it. And I always quote RuPaul in my Beyond Bias training. RuPaul says, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anybody else?
Amen.
Yes.
And she's right.
Absolutely.
She's right.
That's
so
true.
If you,
because everybody's a perception of another person. If you're perceiving, you're going out there, you hate yourself, you're going around hating everybody else.
That's right.
Like, that's the way it goes. And you can see it,
Yeah.
Tanya, how do you encourage individuals to embrace like their authentic self during like these legal profession, world? How do you do that? That's got to be so difficult.
It is. And, when I first got this role, I got feedback once. I'm not going to mention the person, but it's a colleague, and she called me up and she was like, can I talk to you about this episode of your podcast? And I was like, sure. And she was like, you're just so negative. Like, you're just so negative. Like, why would anyone want to be a lawyer after hearing what you have to say about what the legal industry is and how it was or whatever, like that's racist and all these things. I let her talk. I let her get her feelings out. And I was like, well, I really appreciate that you trusted me enough to like tell me this, because it's obvious that you cared about how I was coming off and you felt like it was affecting the very thing I was trying to accomplish. And so thank you so much for taking that time. And the reason why I do that is because I think it's more important to be honest. And that when people really know what it's like, they can better prepare, and it will actually help them to not experience things, or to at least mitigate the experience of imposter syndrome, which I'm using in quotes because I really think it's a bad misnomer. Like, what we call it shouldn't be what we call it. And I explained this to her, and we talked about it, and she was like, okay, like whatever, we could agree to disagree. And there was other parts that she, appreciated that I said or whatever. Now she is one of my closest friends. What? She is so down with the cause. And like last year at some point, I remember she called me. She was like, Tanya, you were right. I'm sorry. I see it now. And she's one of my colleagues who I've seen such a huge evolution in her behavior, in her thoughts, and the ways that she thinks about things. And like, it's all because there was this trust and we could have these conversations.
Yeah, that's got to be, and then it's crazy when the more honest we are. I mean, I think with honesty, we know who our people are. Like, right. You can either hang with us or get the hell out of my way. But I do appreciate that she felt, that it was a safe space to go and tell you.
And to tell me that, right?
Because it takes a lot of courage.
I'm realizing I didn't even answer your question. I went on this tangent. Sorry. My brain is like a bee in a jar. You were asking about what I would say to incoming, and I went on this tangent. So I prefaced it because I want to be honest. Because I want to be honest with you. And so my whole job is about this, actually. My whole job is about making sure that we get more diversity into the profession, right? Like, that was the mandate of my office. And so how do we do that? We do it with like radical honesty. We have a podcast, like I was telling you guys, Building Belonging, where we talk about all these things. And we don't just talk about the issues and leave it at that. We also talk about ways that we think people should approach these things, and some of the change we want to see. We run pipeline programs. I run like 4 pipeline programs out of my office to bring more students and people into the profession. I'm also right now working on a really exciting project that I started last year after the decision for SFFA came out, the affirmative action decision. So basically, in a nutshell, what I'm doing is I'm trying to organize the industry to create a commitment to the industry, to the pipeline, and make some collective action moves to get more pipelines open in as many places as we can, to kind of combat what we saw. And we already have quite a few partners. We had a conference last year.
That is so awesome.
That is amazing. That's great.
You
So we're
go,
really excited.
girl.
Yes.
Woo!
So that's one of the things we're doing. We are very honest in our approach. We really do try to tell people what they're going to face and why. So I do think that what we're doing is different from a lot of places that you might see. We're
Amazing.
having a professional clothes thrift shop next week at the City Bar.
What?
I have
Wow.
over 100 suits in my office right now. Some of them with tags
Wow.
on them.
That's amazing. So
Come,
cool.
send it around. It's open to everyone. I'll send you
Oh,
the
you
flyer.
gotta send me the
That's
flyer. Yes, so that
great.
we can post it also on our
Yes,
chat.
Yes,
on
yes,
our podcast.
yes, yes.
absolutely.
That's so cool.
Wow. I have another question for you, Tanya. What advice do you offer? You know, us people of color, women, even, you know, Dominicans that are interested in law, you know, in the world of law, in the world of what you're doing, even teaching, just because you've had so many different titles. And it's just so, all of it is so like incredible to me because you have not only learned the ways and how to bring, you know, inclusivity to us people, but I feel like we need more direction. We need, like you said, more people of color in these industries and these corporations that can bring more diversity, inclusivity, and, you know, just feeling like belonging in these worlds. Yeah. So what do you suggest?
So I'm so glad you asked that. I think everyone can and should be a DI practitioner. Like, I don't care if you're a doctor, I don't care if you're a teacher or secretary or a janitor. Every single person can do something in their role and can use the tools that already exist to advocate for themselves and others. And when I started my DEI journey, I was not a DI practitioner. I was an associate. Right? I was an associate. I was a full-time lawyer working. And there's it's a double-edged sword because a lot of times the people who do this free DEI, this like DEI that is not paid, that's not even acknowledged by the institution, right, falls on women of color in a really big way. There was like a Forbes article about it a couple years ago. And so I want to acknowledge that because I do think that that's really unfair and it's not a great way to exist. And I want to acknowledge that in doing that, in like becoming an expert myself, reading all the books, going to all the trainings, listening to all the podcasts, following all the right people, it was how I was able to lift myself up and out. It's how I was able to like use those tools against the people who needed those tools to be used against, right? Like I ended up, I was in the law firm for 6 years. By the time I left, I was a trusted resource to the firm. I was brought in to have difficult conversations with the partners and the associates around race, around inequity, around BLM, around all these things, when I was just a regular schmegular lawyer like everyone else. Right. And so,
well, not like everyone else, girl.
I mean, we know,
Not like
we know what I mean. And like on the salary and all that stuff, I was like everyone else, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's what got me this position. It's what got me this knowledge too. Because here's the thing: if you don't know, it's really easy to be tricked. It's really easy to be gaslit. It's really easy to be like, well, I guess this is just how it's supposed to be. No, you don't let anyone tell you how it's supposed to be. I think everyone should read DEI Deconstructed. I think that regardless of what your role is, you should know what these tools are, what they should be doing. Because even if it's to say, hey, I think we need something else. I think I need a different support. Like at least you have something at your disposal. So that's
like you said, it's good to at least know what's going on, like how to defend yourself. And if even our parents, this is where I feel like it can be useful too. Our parents who are not very knowledgeable with the laws, and they get very intimidated when it comes to anything like that. For us to at least have the knowledge for this to help them. I am definitely going to post the book and information on our show notes.
Yeah, I'm going to look into that book. Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm it's definitely going to be reading it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And buying it for my daughter because I know she'll love that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those resources because even, as a therapist, as a trauma therapist, I work with a lot of Black and brown individuals that work in corporations, and they constantly talk what we call corporate trauma.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Constantly.
Burnout.
So thank you for providing that information and resources, because you're absolutely right. Even if you're not a lawyer, if you're not into law, you should be able to read and get more knowledge of not only how to help and support yourself, but others too. Because
Exactly.
we are in the same boat, pretty much, same community.
Yeah.
Many of our stories are very similar.
Yep.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No, thank you. And I'm going to also give you guys a link. My office and I, we put together a 21-day anti-racism challenge for February. And every weekday we had an infographic. And, you know, the teacher and me made it like very pedagogical, like thinking about how learners learn and scaffolding it. So there's 3 levels, and based on what level you're on, you can do it. And it's different topics. And so there's 21, and you could do it at your own pace. So if that's helpful for folks, there's a social worker who's teaching it. Yeah. So I'll send that to you as well.
That's really dope.
So cool. I love that. All right. Tanya, we have our signature question. We ask this question to everybody that comes to our podcast. Right. Tanya, you're amazing. And you keep doing what you're doing, and you're like, I'm gonna be president no matter where you go, right? What's that one thing, or maybe more than one, that is like, I don't care in what groups of people I'm in, I could be with the most important kings and queens, that one Dominican, Puerto Rican in you that you're just never gonna leave, that's always gonna be there no matter where you are in life?
It just comes out.
I feel like there's so many because I practice like I'm just like very authentic, you know? So it's like really, for better or for worse, I do say I'm an executive bruja because of that.
There you go.
Like it really is. You know, one thing I will say that is like very signature me. I think that's what your question is. Like, what's a signature thing that I have?
That it's rooted to your culture, that you can't let go.
That's rooted to my culture specifically.
It just can't, no matter what you do, you could be a millionaire, a billionaire, you could be having a mansion, and there's this one Dominican thing that you just can't let go. Right?
Or Puerto Rican. That you're just like,
Puerto Rican.
Or Puerto Rican.
Just like Latina.
You know, okay, this is going to make you laugh so much because it actually ties perfectly with your podcast. I cannot go to sleep about Vicks. In fact, I take Vicks everywhere I go. I'm not even kidding.
Before walking into the meetings,
Oh my God.
Literally, and you're not even supposed to put it in your nose. I put that shit all the way to my brain. Like it is.
Tanya, you be going to these meetings con un bajo arriba Peru.
And they're like, what's that? Who knows? They don't know it's in my nose. Whatever.
Go on.
Yeah,
you weren't ready for that one. You weren't ready for that one. That was
no, wow. We
Tanya,
were not.
tú no escuchas, no todo se cura con Vicks.
El Viva Porú.
Yeah.
This is who I am as a person.
tú le pones Viva Porú a los muchachos.
So I got the baby one.
I got the baby one too.
I got the baby one because I was like, control yourself a little bit, Tanya. Control yourself a little bit.
Yeah. My mother
and I don't put it in their nose. I don't.
No. Just you.
I got the baby one because Mateo, I put it on his chest one, and he was like, "Oh my God, Mama, this burns, take it off." I was like, "Oh my God."
You're like, you're
but
weak.
if it was you when you were a kid, it was burning you when you were a child. It was burning you when you were a child, and that would be like, "Quédate quieta."
That's right. See, you broke that cycle, Margaret. I'm so proud of you.
You'll be like, it's burning because it's working.
Yes. No, I'm pretty sure there's like, it's all numb here. I'm sure it's like, just like raw, like not even like.
That father was like, my mother wasn't feeling good. She was like dizzy. He goes, here's the Vicks. Ponte Viva Porú, like that's supposed to help her. She's dizzy.
Why are you acting like it doesn't help a little bit though? Why are you guys acting like it doesn't help a little bit? A little bit. It's a little, right? I can't. I'm kidding.
No, it's psychologically is doing something. For many centuries, it's doing something, you know?
And that is real. The placebo effect is real.
It
right?
is. It is.
Lean into it. Lean into it.
It is. Vicks ataca
It's effective.
una.
Todo con Vicks.
Everything.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, Tanya.
Full
It's been
circle.
such
Full
a
circle moment.
pleasure. I know, for
Thank you.
real. Tanya, where can we find you, girl? How, which platforms can you show, tell our
Yeah.
listeners?
So the best place to find like what I'm doing around DEIB is LinkedIn. I used to be way more active. I've taken a step back for a bit since LinkedIn was wilding out for a while. But a lot of my content is there, and we do a lot of stuff with my office there. So you can follow my office, the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at the New York City Bar on LinkedIn or on Instagram. We're also on Instagram.
Awesome.
And me there. My private socials are really lame. They're just really me and my friends, and I keep it that way.
Excellent. Yeah.
And give us one more time, give us the name of your podcast, and we will have like a link also on the show notes.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. So the name of the podcast is called Building Belonging, and it's usually like building belonging, and then like a topic that we talk about. Right? So it'll be like building belonging, psychological safety. Building belonging, fill in the blank. And it's through the New York City Bar Association, and you can hear it anywhere you listen to podcasts. I will say there's a lot of building belonging podcasts in the world, so make sure that you look for the one from the New York City Bar Association.
Got it.
Okay, perfect.
Oh my God, you are doing amazing things.
Thank you guys so much.
Yes.
This was so much fun.
We need a lot more Tanya, like little Tanya's all over.
We need little Tanya
running
around.
Well, I appreciate you, but we are not having any more children. I'm just kidding.
Well, we need more of you in this world, and thank you for all you do.
Thank
Keep
you.
shining, girl. That light is
appreciate you guys.
amazing and beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Don't forget to put yourself first. Keep doing the work.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Yes.
Same to all of you. I'm going to go run now, so
Yes.
I'll
Go to your bed.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey there, podcast fam. Don't forget to click on the show notes and buy us a coffee. Your support not only quenches our thirst, but it also fuels our podcast with necessary subscriptions and equipment to keep it going strong. Every and any contribution means the world to us. Thank you for being a part of our journey. No Todo Se Cura con Vicks loves you.